everyone for coming. So basically we're here today to show our disapproval of our politicians' third pay rise in 16 months. This is the first time in history any Prime Minister has received over $500,000 in a year. The increase is coming into effect 1st of July this year, and we say no to this increase, and they should have said no as well. The federal government moved 100,000 sole parents in January this year from parenting payment single to the inadequate payment of Newstart. This was a drop ranging from $65 to $100 a week. Those with the youngest child turning 8 will now be moved across to Newstart. The first excuse given was that it was a budget measure to get back into the surplus. They knew that this would never happen. It was a lie. The second excuse was to apply tough love for that class of people, so we're called. Over 60% of us are already working and 27% of us are already studying. So we're not lazy, we do get out there, we do better ourselves for us and our children. The cuts imposed on 40,000 sole parents 2006 onwards have proved that this did not increase paid work involvement. So why did Julia Gillard implement this policy, which was a Howard Liberal policy, when it didn't increase the work involvement? Julia Gillard claims to be an activist feminist Prime Minister. Yet how could a feminist put sole parents, which are mostly women, deliberately under the poverty line when her own Parliamentary Committee advised it violated the human rights of sole parents and their families in Australia? The UN has voiced their concerns, but we are still waiting for a response from our government. In response to Julia Gillard's delivering what's now called the blue tie speech, the Prime Minister said the government dominated by men in blue ties would mean hard-won financial gains for women would be rolled back. Julia, we want to know why you are rolling back parenting payment single to the inadequate allowance Newstart. We are here to say we want to know where our pay rise is. Your budget increase to Newstart next year doesn't cut it. Australia's most comprehensive household survey has found that children of single parents are sinking further into poverty, while those raised in two-parent households are less likely to be poor than a decade ago. Nearly 1 in 4 children living with a single parent is below the poverty line, compared with 7.6% of those living with two parents. The poverty rate for children living with a single parent has risen 15% since 2001, up from 20.9% to 24.1%. The Hilda survey, managed by the University of Melbourne, has tracked social trends by interviewing the same 12,000 people each year since 2001. Report co-author Associate Professor Roger Wilkins said children who grew up in poverty were often less educated, struggled to find a job, suffered intergenerational transmission of welfare dependence, and the changes to the single-parent pension were most likely cause of rising poverty among children of lone parents, he said. In 2010, 17.3% of all children were living below the poverty line. 37% of people on social security payments live below the poverty line, including 52% on those on Newstart, 45% on those on parenting payment. The level of poverty was 12.6% in capital cities compared to 13.1% outside capital cities. The proportion of people in poverty rose by approximately 0.33% from 2003 to 2010. Jet fees in December 2012. People weren't even given notice that their jet fees were changed until they received their invoices. The rate changed from $1 per day to $1 per hour. This meant that those paying $10 per fortnight all of a sudden were receiving bills of $110. The May budget. Newstart allowance remains an inappropriate payment for single parents. Despite widespread acceptance of the inadequacy of the level of Newstart allowance, significant problems remain. The change won't come into effect until next year, and the difference that we're getting is only $15.20 per fortnight. The threshold of our earning capacity is only raised from $62 to $100. The CPI generally increases at a lower rate than the cost of living for income support recipients. A more appropriate indexation rate would be preferable. Preston Salvation Army Emergency Relief Centre, Dora Solomar, said staff are forced to turn away up to 20 people per day. Many other welfare agencies are experiencing similar problems. They just can't keep up with the demand, which has doubled since the January 1st changes. Some women are saying they are only allowed up to 6 visits per year. And some, in the very impoverished areas, are only allowed to come in 2 times a year. Children are missing school because their parents can't afford school lunches. Parents feel the stigma associated with going to seek welfare and find this experience humiliating. It gives them a sense of failure in not being able to provide for their families. This wasn't felt under the parenting payment system. It was a more generous income that was in line with providing children and their needs. The Salvation Army did a survey and made a direct link to the rise of welfare needs as a result of the single parent changes. Single parents are now going cold and living in the dark and skipping meals just to get by. They are having to sell their things to buy food, pay for petrol and textbooks in the uni. Things are no longer affordable for the children, such as school uniforms, school shoes, books, camps, excursions, school photos, sports, and even entertainment. When children are invited to birthday parties, they feel that they can't go because their parents can't even afford presents. Some women have been reported to turn to the sex industry. They've also started to shoplift, and the children are roaming the streets, robbing from people's property to sell just to buy food. People have had to stop their insurances on their cars, homes, contents. There is no affordable protection anymore when things do go wrong. Housing affordability has increased. Salvos did a survey and found that 13% of unaffordability in the housing since the January 1st changes. Anglicare found that the houses on the market, there was only less than 1% that were affordable for sole parents. Waiting lists for public health care are lengthy, and they can no longer afford private health cover. Going to specialists is too expensive, so parents and children go without much needed specialised care. Say politicians, more pay? No way. This is our National Blue Tie Day. No pay rise for our greedy politicians. Sorry, here's Diane McAlpine.
Hello. I wanted to talk about Julia, how she's always playing the gender card, and just that the large majority of single parents are women, and it was feminists that got the changes during the Gough Whitlam era in '73, and this is actually the 40th year that it's actually been in place. And Julia's always going on about, equality to women, but she's personally, I know in my own life, it's affected me that the struggle is it's unbearable. My son was being bullied in high school and I had to take him out, and he was having to deal with remarks like, go to Centrelink and get your payment, and is your mum a prostitute yet? And these were the comments that were being said to him, and it was just really cruel, and it was really affecting him. It was just demoralising. The other thing is, I used to be a heroin addict and I struggled with homelessness for 10 years, and I've overcome that. And one of the things that I had to also overcome was my dependency on welfare. And this is who Julia supposedly says that she's trying to break the cycle. I was actually breaking the cycle on my own, and I'm still doing that, and I refuse to give up. But one of my own personal things that I was proud of myself was I'd broken my relying on going and getting food vouchers and stuff, and now as it stands I'm back in that situation where I'm having to go and get welfare, and I hate it. I really hate it. Prior to that I could get by. It was a struggle, but I could get by. I've lost $130 a fortnight. I'm actually just about to do a diploma. I've been told that I have to stay on what I'm getting. I won't be able to go on to education payment, because as it stands, once you're already receiving a Newstart or any Centrelink payment, you can't change to another one, that you have to stay on the one that you're on. So it means that on the amount that I've got, I have to pay for books. I'm paying for my kids' books. I'm still paying off my kids' books. I haven't been able to catch up with it. My son has cystic fibrosis, and I struggle with his medication. He's been really sick. He was off all week last week. If I was to go out and get a job, that'd be really hard. I'd have to have a really empathetic boss. And I think, Julia should take into account there are a lot of parents with children with disabilities, children with serious illness. And a lot of the single parents have also come from, domestic violence situations, and that is the reason that it was lobbied to get in the first place, so that women had more choices. And, if Julie is a feminist, she would be aware of this, but obviously she's not. I'd call her a fundamentalist feminist, and they're usually women that think they know what's better for you without asking you. It's all professionals making decisions for people that they know nothing about, and it's really offensive. We're not couch potatoes that sit around watching TV all day. We're quite intelligent, and we want a better quality of life for our kids. We don't want to be on welfare. A large majority of women were working and men were working. There was 65% women parents were working, and 27% were students. There's been a lot of students that have had to bail out from university because they can't afford to keep doing their courses, because not only was the Newstart reduced, but also the JET program was reduced. And the JET program is where the government helped you to pay for childcare, and that's been reduced significantly to the point that people just can't afford that. So they've had to just bail out and not do their courses. And we're not happy about that. So that's why we're here today, and we're telling Julia to start addressing policies that are, she's losing in the seats where there's the battlers, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason. It's because she's out of touch. She has no idea who we are and what it's like for us to struggle. She thinks she knows, but she doesn't. And if she got out and she actually met people, she'd be quite astonished as to the struggle that's going on. If she'd just get in touch with the Australians, it would be a better quality of life for us. We don't want welfare, but we would like to be able to have some dignity and a better quality of life, and just to be able to give our kids a better life. It's not fair. The kids are concerned about bills and whether they get new shoes or new clothes because mum can't afford it or dad can't afford it. It's just unfair, and it's just rotten to the core. And we say, Julia, you're always on about Abbott, cutting to the bone. Take a good look at yourself, because you're projecting your crap onto Abbott. He is bad, but you're just as bad because you're Labor, and Labor's meant to represent the battlers, and you do not represent the battlers. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. And I just want to say another thing, that Julia, we're here today to speak to you, but Tony Abbott, we're coming after you next. I'd like to introduce Vasca, who's from the Uniting Care Rotary Support and Housing, and she's going to tell it from the other side. She actually supports people like us on welfare, and she's going to...
So Kerry's just invited me to say a few words. I've been a social worker in this area for 7 years. When I first started at Uniting Care Rotary Support and Housing, we might have got maybe 5 or 6 people coming in for a food voucher and emergency relief. We have anywhere up to 50 to 60 people coming in these days. get disqualified, if I get depressed and I have a job, I can afford to buy food and I can afford to send my kids to school, I fully understand there are parents who are and they are depressed, they have no capacity to do things because they can't afford the mercy loans. We regularly see people who have their gas and electricity disconnected for at least 3 to 4 weeks, where we have to plead with companies to put the gas back on, to put the electricity back on, and then try and put people on payment plans. We're seeing kids in this area who are now third generation of unemployed, not educated, kids leaving school at grade 6, kids leaving school at grade 3, not coming to school. Parents can't afford uniforms, they can't afford food, and further to this, they can't afford to run their cars, they drive unregistered, they drive cars that are unroadworthy because they need to get kids to school, but they can't afford petrol, they can't afford to keep cars on the road. Kids can't afford medical services or health. We have long waiting lists in the area for health services around dental, speech pathology, mental health, and these are so great. I would challenge any politician to actually come in on Newstart with 2 children paying anywhere up to £300 a payment per day, which would be approximately 60 to 70% of I challenge them, and not for a week, because I think you can make do with a systematic to live for about 3 or 4 months, to kids asking for things, kids not attending birthday parties because they're too embarrassed, because they don't have a present, kids developing mental health issues. Come and youth festival before on Thursday, when young people are being there for offending. We have one of the highest youth juvenile corrections rate in the state. So that's telling us that we have problems. And by doing this, we're putting children further into poverty and we're risking their futures as well.
Now we're going to hear from Nick.
Thanks, Kerry. I'm not a single parent. I've got a Newstart for a while, and I've had a bit of a history of being concerned about welfare. And I'm very concerned about what's happening to single parents, because they are just another one of many groups that has been singled out for special treatment. And what it seems to be happening, from what I can see, is that we have a situation, and the situation we have involves something called global industrial change, and is affecting our labour market, and is affecting our society, and our politicians do not want to talk about it because they're frightened. If we talk about it, we will discover that there are things going on that will make people very uncomfortable. The whole notion that there's such a lot of work around is rubbish, in my opinion. If you look at any measure of how unemployment statistics are collected, you have to say there's something quite strange about the way they're collected. You think about the claims that Julia has made that there have been 1 million new jobs created since the Labor government came into office. If you consider that some employers are turning full-time jobs into casual jobs, you might have one full-time job that's reduced to 3 casual jobs in the course of a year, three-month jobs. They're full-time, so they are considered to be new jobs. And there's a thing called churning that goes on. And I've worked out that if you have one employer doing this with one job turning into 3, and if that is happening in 45,000 factories in the country, and if they're churning it through the system every 3 months, the total you get at the end of that 7 years of Labor's government is about 1 million jobs. It's almost 1 million jobs. So it can be done that way. There are other ways they collect the figures, of course. There are other ways they count things. But it's interesting to note, if you look at these sorts of things, just how things can be twisted. And I'm concerned about that in regard to single parents, because one of the things that the government continues to go on about with the whole approach to work and welfare to work is about the dignity of work. Now, work is a very, very good thing to be involved in. It's something that people should be involved in, and people should, through mutual obligation, have the opportunity and take the opportunity to give back. That's a no-brainer. However, the whole thing about that requires acceptance of the notion that there's enough work to go around when there's not. then you have to ask the question about how single parents are going to get jobs within the hours that they are free, not looking after children. You have to consider how many single parents have the skills that will be required to get the jobs that are available, because many of our unskilled and semi-skilled jobs have gone offshore, and we know that, but we don't want to talk about it. And so this whole notion of having single parents give a good example to their children by getting work, that's fine. Seeking work is fine. But I predict that within a very short time, a lot of the single parents who are now seeking employment will be pushed into voluntary work and other ways of just making them, because that's happening already with people on Newstart. They're being given voluntary work, training courses and work for the dole. There are a lot of people out there who are just being kept busy when they should be working, but the jobs are not there for them to go to. There's some really big questions about that sort of stuff. So I could go on all day about this. There are so many issues that are important here. The whole notion about grandfathering, if you're aware of what grandfathering is, the term's been used to describe the way in which single parents have been put on to Newstart from their parenting payment. Back in the year 2006, the Howard government moved a lot of people who were on parenting payment onto Newstart. Then they didn't move everybody, because they obviously, from the way I look at it, they wanted to make sure there wasn't too much fuss about it. Now they have moved, the Gillard government, the Labor government, has now moved a large number of people in January onto Newstart from parenting payment. And they've justified it by saying we're equalising. We're bringing these people in line with the other people who were changed over a while ago. This is supposed to be an expression of fairness. Yet what it is, it's saying we've taken away from them, now we're going to take away from you. That is not very fair at all. And there are so many issues that I could stand here for the next half an hour and talk about, but you'd probably get bored with it all. But the fact is, yes. You see, what's happening there is I believe that the overarching thing here is the fact that our governments, Liberal, Labor, whatever, are all concerned about the same thing. They know that global industrial change is a major issue, but they are afraid that if they talk about it openly, then the truth will be known about, one, how serious the problem is, and equally, how long they've been telling lies about it. And it's like the old story, you start telling a lie, then you have to tell another lie to cover up the lie, and the whole thing is layered now. And so we have a really difficult situation that we are all in. Every Australian is in this situation where we need to get out of the hole that's been dug. Now, some of that hole was dug by people who invested offshore in the 70s and 80s and 90s. That's where our jobs went. We talk about Australia being uncompetitive in the manufacturing sector. Part of that is because we made foreign places like China so competitive. Investors in Australia helped that happen. They put their money over there. Now, you can't tell me that some of these guys are not partly responsible for poverty in Australia. Now, I'm not saying we should all be given jobs, but I am saying that we have to take that into account, because one of the other things which is happening with people on welfare is that the government says there's plenty of jobs. Create the impression among the community that there are plenty of jobs, and you assume that people who are on welfare are lazy and not looking, and that is a lie. Barefaced lie. So that's one real big issue. So how we actually address these things is a very, very big question, because every time you try to bring up, and explore it, panic buttons go off. People are afraid. So how do we actually address these sorts of issues openly and candidly without causing economic problems? That is a real big question that our politicians must answer, but every time you try to ask it, bang, but no one wants to know about it. So that's all I'm here to say today, is that single parents are in a really bad position, but they are not the only group that is. There are a lot of people who are also in the same position, and we really need to talk about this. We need dialogue. Single parents have sent letters to politicians about their concerns. What they get back is a standard form letter saying your government is really concerned, blah, 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 and the tone of it is we don't care. And I think the public is very sick of hearing that, and I'm sure that when this election comes up, a lot of people have already expressed their dissatisfaction with politicians, but part of the reason why politicians are not delivering is because there are things they are frightened to talk about. That's all I have to say. So have a good day, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. And if anyone else would like to speak, no? Well, we're pretty much finished, and I just want to thank everyone for coming today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.